Do you always use the stuff you craft? Like, for instance, I sometimes set up Dwarven Forge sets that never get revealed. So there's two answers here. One is totally. Setting things up as like a this might come to pass or this might not. I think that's depending on how you use terrain. I definitely use terrain primarily for combat or like some sort of big moment, and then I'll bring out a scene. It doesn't happen all the time, but it happens seldom enough I can think of times when it happened, and that's totally fine. Like, it's not you don't want to like cajole things into like trying to manufacture something that doesn't naturally happen. What I'll also say though is that I found that my players enjoyed learning about that so much that I've absolutely lied about that in the past. I can think of a couple of times where, in order to emphasize for them, like, oh yeah, you guys just totally, that wasn't what I was expecting. You guys skipped, like, I've got a couple things, in the other room that just, you guys didn't have to face, right? I'm definitely guilty of that, but it does, well, whatever. Sometimes we lie, right? But it does just as a consequence of running these things, keeping them based on player choice. Like, obviously that's going to happen sometimes. Jesse, this is going to be the basis for modular traps being laid on these. So I'm figuring out exactly the form factor that it should be, which I may have to grab my other stairs to make sure that this is the right fit. Yeah, I have 2 campaigns I run every week. And I say every week, like, obviously scheduling stuff, just like anybody else, like that gets in the way just as much as anybody else's games. So I have 2 campaigns that I've been running for the past 4 years, pretty much. They're pretty deep. One of them's kind of in the end game. I've only been running D&D for really 5, going on maybe 6 years. So crafting for less time than that, props for even less time than that. This has been something I've just kind of really dove into and really enjoy. So yeah, it's. I mean, relatively speaking, it's all really new for me. But I did, I was making stuff before I've started publishing things, and that was. I had never drawn world maps or towns or dungeons. I had never sculpted monsters out of clay and foam before. I had seriously never built ships and towers and mansions that are all playable inside. I had never drawn monsters or written poetry or turned that poetry into fake music that was really actually a puzzle. And I had never designed puzzle boxes or coded languages or props that reveal those coded languages. D&D is one of those rare hobbies that sort of unfolds into other hobbies. That was fun. Like, I really like the intimate nature of the game and how stuff that's made and experienced is sort of just for that group. So I was very happy to do that for a while until I was kind of looking around. I was like, shoot, I could probably share some of this stuff out and see how that would go, because I have now sort of discovered that game design and D&D as a whole is what I'd really like to spend my time doing. So yeah, more and more it's kind of all I do and think about. Lots of props. Yeah, I do a bunch of props. And so I sort of dance here on the channel between crafting and prop making. Like, this stair concept really just started from an idea of like, oh, I think I have a decent idea for how to do stairs. And now it's like, oh, I made a mimic monster, and oh, I've got these encounter designs, and I'm probably going to make a big long video about all of it. I tend to do that about a lot of things in this game. Simple concepts start out and then kind of balloon and grow. And yeah, I love that. I love that process. Let me tell you about a puzzle I never expected to craft. In the early game, my players saved a little girl from goblins, so she drew a picture for them. Aww.
Around the edges, she wrote a note in a language she said her mother taught her. She said it meant forever. We went on with the session, but less than an hour later, one of the players, the druid, had sorted out what each of the letters must translate to. They used pattern recognition to do it, which is amazing. So earlier in this campaign, they ran through this puzzle board I built based on an idea in Tasha's. You step on a type of magic, you get hit. Well, then they saw it a second time, but it was harder. Same gimmick, but the floor was covered in this other language, the one they knew 5 characters of. I thought they would just run through, take some damage, and have a laugh. But instead, they brute forced the whole board. They solved it, the whole thing. Incredible. Yes, they are amazing players, and no, you can't have them.
So spikes, that makes sense. Some sort of some form of goo could be, it could be slick or it could be stick. So maybe one would be more sort of like oily versus the other one being more like an ooze. It'd be fun to have one of these inserts that held up like a rolling barrel. That way you could like move a rolling barrel down the stairs. Oh, guys, I forgot I did a thing. I actually haven't tested it without the magnetic thing underneath it. Let me test it out. But I think if I do this, come back to me. Totally necessary. I put magnets. Okay, so I do need I do need the magnet base underneath this, which is fair enough. I mean, the clay weighs a ton. And I may have used it on the other one, actually, but it needs just like one more magnet on that one to work. It worked on this one earlier. Yeah. It's obviously out of view, but that's more of a fun way to present the staircase mimic, I think, when I take pictures and stuff of it. I can't put, unfortunately, a staircase on top of it because of how I built it, but yeah. It's nice that it can go up just a little bit.